This one is for all the monster fuckers out there. And it's times like this I'm glad my channel isn't monetized. Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to the big list of monster erotica. If you are unaware, monster erotica is a subgenre of romance in which a noticeably human character falls in love with a noticeably inhuman character, or in some cases, multiple. Now, I have read some in which the noticeably human character has like some inhuman elements. They're a witch, they're some other kind of like nymph, but they look more or less human all around. Meanwhile, the monster, more or less, tends to be very noticeably not human. We're not just talking vampires that just essentially look like people but pale. We're talking you can see at a glance that dude is not a human person. Things like fur, snouts, tails, gills, scales, and the like usually are the people that these human-looking protagonists are falling in love with. So I decided to make an entire list about it. I was originally one of the people that was really like weirded out by monster erotica. I didn't understand it. You know, I was one of those people that was like pathologizing it. Like, why would you want to do that? Whatever. But I love really weird, kitschy sci-fi. And the height of really weird, kitschy sci-fi is, of course, alien romances. So I started reading those and just kept going farther and farther out on the ledge until I stumbled across really alien books. And I was like, oh no, wait, this is awesome. And again, I know a lot of people are like, we must interview and look into all of the societal reasons that people like monster erotica and how human men of the modern world actually are more of a danger to human women than these monsters are in the books, and and we can do all that, and the queer allegories and fun. I just like fun monster books. And, well, I'm not going to say that any of those ideas are fully wrong. For my part, one of the things I love the most about monster books is that it can't begin with it just being a given that these people are going to fall in love. The same way that a lot of human-to-human romance books do, where it can just be like, oh, they're both hot, they're both attracted to each other, kiss, go. In a monster romance, they have to explain in detail exactly what it is that these two have, or multiple people have between each other, to explain why they're willing to be in love with this monster. And as a result, by nature of the genre, there tends to be a lot more focus on the actual buildup of the attraction and the relationship between them. And I love that because I love me a really in-depth slow burn. A good monster romance over 500 pages, perfection. So, what criteria did I use to curate this list? Mainly, I focused on romances that I've read. I have read all of these books and I recommend them, that feature at least one character that noticeably looks inhuman at any given point in the story, but most notably during the steamy times. The monster character might have a human disguise that they wear for purposes of usually plot, but they also have to have very noticeable monstrous parts that come out during those crucial moments. And yes, because these are monster erotica, there are erotic scenes. It's just kind of the name of the game. Now, this is not the first video of this kind that I've done. Back when Ice Planet Barbarians was first exploding in popularity, I actually did a video kind of doing a tier difficulty list for people who were just getting into alien romance. So if you're expecting to see all of those giant blue himbos on this list, I will have that link down in the description below. You can check that one out. There is some monster erotica in the highest levels of difficulty in that video. For this video, I will also be giving kind of low-key, this is a little bit more beginner, this is a little bit more advanced, because I know from experience that this genre is really hard to get into and can be really daunting if you've never tried it before, especially if you're just getting into erotica. No shame, I get it. Some of this can get really weird, but it's also really awesome. So I will begin with the books that I believe are very noticeably decent enough for beginners to the genre, followed by some books later on that are very noticeably more advanced, usually because something in the biology will make the sex scenes noticeably different. But for the most part, everything in the middle doesn't really have any kind of ranking or tier system. It's just, these ones I know for a fact are beginner friendly, these ones I know for a fact are more advanced, and then everything else is kind of just in the middle. For the more beginner-friendly books, first we have In the Bedroom of Medusa by Megan Cubed. This is a short novella all about Bet you can't figure out who. Medusa. It features a young sex worker named Evelyn who is propositioned by a strange veiled woman she can't fully see named Lady Demetria, who invites her to be a live-in companion. I really liked the very positive view on sex work in this book, and also, I mean, it's not a mystery, obviously, it's in the title, but it is still fun to have the veil and Evelyn not know, and the tension of what's she gonna do when she finds out. And of course, Lady Demetria lives in a large, spacious home with an all-female staff, and I, in general, love the idea that we are giving Medusa a lot more love. She was super screwed over in the ancient myths, so the idea of making her the focal point of want was really nice to me. And the reason that I considered this one a little bit more beginner, one, it's a novella, so it's quicker, and two, yes, Medusa has hair snakes. If I remember correctly, I believe they're just appendages, like fingers. They're not necessarily wholly sentient animals attached to her head that move, obviously, and they do get involved in the fun times, but for the most part, the rest of her is basically almost entirely humanoid. And now I get it that, like, for some people the snakes might be a little weird, but it's also, you know what you're getting into, and I don't think snakes are as big of a fear as another creature on this list. So in general, if you want something to get into it in like a little smaller snippet, this one has some great tension, some great chemistry. Again, we got that positive sex worker rep. Admittedly, the kind of antagonist, big conflict thing felt slightly thrown in, but the vibes are immaculate the entirety of the way through, so I can't complain all that much. And again, just more sapphic monster romances, first of all, and definitely want more stories with Medusa getting to be the spotlight. Next up for our beginner section, we have Unearthly by Katie Jane Gallagher. This is a sci-fi retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Yes, there are a lot of them, but stick with me. This is all about Corinne, whose father goes missing in the mountains of rural Montana during a snowstorm. She seeks to out after him and discovers a spaceship just kind of hovering there. And sure enough, Dad's on board. Through reasons of plot that I can't necessarily get into without spoiling some things, she is forced to take her father's place on this ship. There has to be a single human on this ship, and she doesn't want it to be her dad, so it has to be her. And our beast representation in here is a totally fur-covered alien. His name is Del, and despite the fact that he is totally covered in fur, everything else is basically humanoid, more or less. Honestly, it's probably a bigger harken back to the original man, the original Beauty and the Beast tale was based on, because the original French, I think it was a French nobleman, or like a man that was like catapulted up to nobility status through just being considered strange, was covered in hair just because of a genetic mutation, but was otherwise entirely human. So that kind of feels like a callback to that. And the spaceship does a really great job of standing in as the, lonely manor house. And it is kind of amusing that Del, our big alien dude, is basically come to Earth for like a mental vacation. He's got some things going on. He needs some time to himself. So he wasn't expecting this human. There's also a very talkative and chatty AI that kind of takes the place of the Mrs. Potts. There is a Gaston insert, which I guess, I don't know. Gaston inserts just never quite live up to the original for me. I need them to be truly heinous, not just like every guy you ever meet that doesn't want to leave you alone. So regardless, the vibes are there. There was a little bit of too much focus for me on the alien world building, so much emphasis on the plants in this greenhouse, although I do love that we had a lot of the plants, again, harkening back to the original story, but the spaceship has a greenhouse, and there's so much information on the plants that you're given, but most of it isn't necessary. But the parts of the romance you do get to see between Del and Corinne are delightful, and you get to delve into Del's brooding past, because of course your beast has to have a brooding past. And despite the fact that it is sci-fi, it still holds a lot of the same gothic aesthetic and gothic vibes that you would want in a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I highly enjoyed it. I also read the sequel to this one, which is a continuation of the same story, this same couple again, and it reveals a little bit more. And in general, I do like how much this honored the original tale while adding more onto it. I can't remember. I believe the steamy scene happens right at the end of this book. I don't think you have to wait to the next book. So if you're on for that, you're good to go. But Corinne has a lot of agency. Del is a sweetheart. And in general, definitely pick this one up if you love Beauty and the Beast retellings, and if you want to get started on your monster erotica journey with a dude that's basically just, human but hair. Now on to the more generalized monster erotica. And first up, we have A Lady of Rooksgrove Manor by Catherine Moon. This is a monster romance polyamory series featuring a different polycule in every book. I believe it's meant to be a trilogy. Books 1 and 2 are already out. But this one is all about a young woman named Esther who is working as a maid and is not particularly good at it. So when she is offered a place at the titular Rooksgrove Manor to be a companion for some monster gentlemen, she jumps at the chance. She is very interested in sex, and it definitely deals a lot of themes of feeling like disgusted with herself because she likes sex so much, but then coming to realize that it's actually a good thing and a part of her she shouldn't shut out, that kind of thing. One of the more negative reviews of this book said that it's literally like next to no plot, just a woman having sex with monsters. And they're not entirely wrong. There is an antagonist, but he does not pop up until well into the book. And this thing is 500 pages. So you really had to like just the idea of her meeting and getting to know all of these quote unquote monsters. This first book does fall into that whole most of them just look like humans with some slight attributes. Like there's a vampire, there's a Jekyll and Hyde type character where he just looks like a nice doctor and will occasionally turn into a dude that just looks like a bigger dude. Like he doesn't like horrifically change. There's an invisible guy, but for the most part, they're all very humanish looking. However, the sequel, A Company of Fiends, which I think I actually like more, has a lot more one plot. There's a lot more like mystery and conflict going on in that one. And 2, that one has the monsters actually being more monstrous, having like multiple arms and wings and, magical powers that come up more in the bedroom than anyone in this book. That book also has a lot more of a polycule feel than a reverse harem. I'm not a big fan of reverse harem in general. And I think Catherine Moon tends to label her books as such just for the marketing, because I've read other books by her that were labeled as reverse harem that definitely aren't, that are definitely group love. So in general, I actually prefer the sequel to this book, but you will need to have read this one first because it sets up the conflict that comes back in that one, and then the polycule from this book comes back in that one as well. I am really hyped for the third, but in general, honestly, if this book wasn't polyamory and didn't have like multiple intense like group sex scenes, I might have titled it as beginner, just because the gentlemen are not as monstrous as you would normally prefer in a monster romance, but it's still a nice ambiance, great group sex scenes if that's what you're into. And in general, I'm really excited to see where the trilogy goes in its final installment. Up next, we have Stalked by the Kraken by Lillian Lark. I was tempted not to put this one on here, but tentacles. So, this one was actually inspired by A Lady of Rooksgrove Manor. The author mentioned in the acknowledgments that she didn't think this book would work until she saw a scene with a tentacle creature and the theater section of A Lady of Rooksgrove Manor that she realized this could work. So this is all about a Kraken man named Gideon who has discovered his mate, suddenly, true mate trope, and he wants to approach her but realizes that she's been burned. Rose is a witch and a matchmaker, and recently she made a match for herself that she thought was 100% by her own magic, and the guy was a total jerk and abandoned her, and now she doesn't understand why that happened. She has no faith in her own abilities because she messed up so badly, and because she's been so burned, Gideon has to be like very slow about it, and is very does it all the wrong way, but like in the adorable way where he's trying to do the right thing, but it fails anyway. However, for the majority of the book, Gideon looks like a normal human man. And so I was like, does this really count? But the thing is that he is in fact a Kraken, and the tentacles do come out in the sex scenes. There are multiple of them. I think past a certain point, they come out in like every sex scene besides like maybe one. So that's definitely going to have to be a kink thing that you're on board with for any of the scenes in this book. And I do still consider it a monster romance, not just because that the author has labeled it as that, but because despite the fact that Rose is a witch, she is beyond the magic. Like, her body is biologically human. Essentially, her body is that of a human woman that you would expect. So, in that instance, she can be a stand-in in a monster romance, but it is really sweet, in them falling in love, and also Rose uncovering the mystery of exactly what went wrong and why that 100% sure thing match that she made for herself went so sideways. Trigger warnings for human trafficking. Admittedly, that subplot kind of comes out of nowhere, but that's the thing that happens. And the sequel, Deceived by the Gargoyles, which loosely takes place in the same universe, using a character that you only kind of see briefly in this one. I also liked that is another polycule romance in this universe involving gargoyles, like full gargoyles, and that one also has a plus-size heroine, which I liked a lot. Lillian Lark has definitely become one of the authors on my if I need to pick up a new book, pick up from this author list, which I am developing. But I'm really excited to see where she goes next, and in general, this is just a great series to get started for some more monster romance fun. Up next, another sci-fi romance, I Married a Lizard Man by Regine Abel. This is an alien romance all about a young woman who is raised in this farming community that is matriarchal, but basically if you're a second or third daughter, you're kind of screwed, and she's like the 12th daughter. So there's really nothing going on for her. There's no really space for her on her home planet, so she decides to sign up for the Prime Mating Dating Agency. And this basically uses telepathic bird aliens, giant like human-sized bird people, who are psychic and therefore can match people with like magic. And so she finds herself being matched with this lizard man, and they get married in an arranged marriage, and basically she has to stay with him for 6 months before they can get annulled, and basically this is her trying to find something else to do with her life. And it's really funny because the themes in this book are really serious considering what it is. It is literally directly talking about colonialism, because Olix's, the lizard man's people, are struggling because there's this major corporation that's come to their planet and they're outrunning everybody else, and his people don't know what to do because they don't farm. They're hunter and gathering people, and they actually have big cultural no's around farming because their ancestors were basically enslaved by another human race and were forced to become farmers. So now it's like to try and make them become farmers, to try to like enslave them again, so they're hardcore against it. So you got this little farmer girl coming to a land that hates farmers, and basically it's all about how do we defeat the big bad corporation coming in. And I did like how the end goal was not force the lizard people to become farmers. It wasn't just, force them to follow what the human wanted them to do. They actually did have to find a compromise in the end, and I really liked that. And of course, this is the first book in a series. The Prime Mating Dating Agency is loosely connected. You'll see like the same psychic bird character recurring, but for the most part, every book is a standalone. Although I think I Married a Minotaur directly continues from the plot of I Married a Birdman, if I remember correctly. I haven't gotten that far yet, but I really liked the emphasis on the cultural aspect and understanding each other's culture, and some major faux pas that actually accidentally happened because, she didn't know she needed to do a thing, and she didn't know that she insulted someone by not doing it. Like those kind of things. I love those kind of conflicts. And in general, as silly as this series looks, I mean, some big themes come up a lot in this. I also loved I Married a Naga. I think that one's my favorite of the series so far. I've read 3, and I think the sequel is my favorite. But in general, these are very lighthearted, but they do still deal with directly inhuman people in general, although the Birdman is a hybrid. So and also the Minotaur is from a people group that are supposed to be biologically aggressive and warlike, which Never a fan of that aspect in fantasy world building, but regardless, I am definitely going to continue with this series. For the most part, as far as I can tell, people who want what this is offering tend to like it. Again, this is one of those things where like you either have to really, really like the genre and you'll love it, or maybe just give it a wide berth. But if you got this far in the video and you're still not into it, I thank you for the random watch minutes, I guess. But regardless, if you are into monster romance, keep this one on your list. Next, we have A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain. This is one of my more recent reads, but I love it so much. This is all about a woman named Rhea who has basically been decided that she is a bad omen. The demons that roam the world killed her entire family, but not her. So for some reason, her village thinks that this means that she somehow is bad luck and brought the demons on. And so when it comes time for this mysterious Duskwalker to take his next tribute, essentially, in exchange for maintaining the wards around their village that help keep demons away, they basically tell her, hey, you have to go with him or we're locking you up for the rest of your life. They don't want to kill her because that also would, like, bring evil on them. Look, the exact reasonings aren't clear, but what is clear is that this is a lovely monster romance with some of the best character work I've seen in its monsters. The Duskwalkers are unlike any monster I've seen in a monster erotica. They have skulls for faces and different animal body parts on their person that basically come to light based on what they eat in their early days. They start out as like these mindless, just hunger-only things, and then as they eat other living beings, they develop their body and their mind, but only by eating humans. So Orpheus doesn't want to eat humans anymore. He wants a companion. And he decides that he's been taking these tributes basically to try and find a companion for himself. Problem is that the Duskwalkers have this thing where if they smell fear or blood, this animalistic side gets like clicked on, and he might accidentally eat his supposed companion. Awkward. But fortunately for him, Rhea isn't so much scared as much as she is just furious a lot of the time. She's furious at the village for the way they treated her and has a very nihilistic view on the world. So while she is afraid to a certain extent, it's a lot less than other people are, so it doesn't actually click on his animalistic side, and therefore things begin to happen in this cozy little cabin in a place called the Vale. And I mentioned this in my best and worst of indie books, but the setting, it could be a horror movie or a horror book just because there are demons in the Vale. There's demons everywhere. And the only way to keep them out is by a salt circle and then these little hanging trinkets. But the thing is that the salt circle can be undone through kicking dirt over it or rain. And the trinkets are only active for like X amount of time. The herbs will wither and die. So there's this constant, you have to stay on top of the protections or else the demons will come in. If they come in, Rhea is as good as gone. But of course, feelings begin to come out, and Orpheus, who didn't actually know that much about himself, starts to learn, and Rhea basically starts to hope that she could have a life she actually enjoys instead of just being nihilistic and having elements of freedom, because even though this place is better than her village or treats her better than her village, like, she still feels trapped and she still wants to wander. And it was just a fantastic series. As far as I can tell, this book kind of blew up for the author. A tweet got like super viral, and I went and I looked at like the author's Goodreads page, and this is like the 7th book she's published, but this one has like 10, 20 times the attention on Goodreads that any of her other books do. That's why I tell indie authors, it might take you a while to kick off, but eventually you will kick off. You just gotta keep going, and I think she's really nailed this down. I'm so excited that the sequel is gonna be released in October of 2022, which is mind-boggling because this one was released in June of 2022. I don't believe that indie authors actually sleep, but I loved this one so much. Of course, great sex scenes. Of course, great fun. Human enough-ish, but not entirely bit. And the scenes in the bathtub, perfect. Loved it. I love the character or the creature design. I love Rhea. I love the really dumbass Mavka / Duskwalker, who also has to be like taught how to human. He's adorable, and I can't wait for his book. I think this is the next one. But regardless, I need more people to check this one out because it was so good. This next one is probably pretty well known, and that is The Dragon's Bride by Katie Robert. Katie Robert is a pretty established, I believe, hybrid author, and this is one of her indie works, I believe, but it is basically all about a group of women that agree to marriage contracts for different reasons. The protagonist of this book, Briar, agrees because she needed to get away from a very abusive husband, and so sure, she'll sign up to be some dude's bride for 7 years. Now, the book does establish early on that the marriage can be in like name only if the woman so decrees it. She does not have to actually have any marital relations with her husband, but like they're romance books, so like regardless, one of the big things for Briar is the fact that any children that come as a result of the union have to stay in the land of their fathers. So basically, if you want to have kids, you have to stay even, past the 7 years or abandon them. And Briar's like, maybe not. However, I did love Soul, our dragon, basically protagonist. Although the lore of this world is that Soul's people now are more humanesque or humanoid, but like still with scales and snouts and tails, but were originally sentient, like full dragons that somehow mated with humans in like ancient times to become, so like essentially everyone now is hybrids. But like, I can't stop thinking about the logistics of that. Regardless, we definitely have a lot of mentions of abuse, and that is a lot of Briar's arc in this one is learning to overcome abuse and not assuming that everyone is out to get her. And then Soul, of course, is basically in a lot of political trouble with his people because they're not the biggest fan that their king is, hitting up with a human. But for whatever reason, humans are necessary because humans, while they are not themselves magical, they're like conduits for magic. So to bring back dying magic to their realm, a creature human hybrid will actually like be more adept at it. Again, some of the lore implications are maybe not the most well thought through, but some great kink in this one. This one is very much primal kink, and I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but definitely be on the lookout for that. Great scenes if you're interested in that, but I did like the dynamic between the two. I loved the slow growth. I wish it had quite like a little bit of a bigger cast. It definitely felt very empty. Quite literally, the castle is like next to no people in it for a while because of more plot purposes. But regardless, I really did enjoy this one. I am looking forward to continuing on with this series. I want to say there's like 5 books gonna be. I have to check when the next one comes out. I think it might come out soon. Again, indie authors like that. It's just so much work. Regardless, you've probably heard of this one if you know anything about Monster Erotica, but if you haven't, check it out. Quick question for you. Are you feeling in the Christmas spirit? That's right, next we have a holiday Monster Erotica, and that is A Kiss from Krampus by Red Hanner. Obviously, this is about the titular monster of Christmas lore. If you don't know, Krampus is kind of like the foil to Santa Claus. He beats naughty children, maybe carries them away in a bag to be eaten, but he's a tall humanoid furry dude with a really long tongue. So it was kind of always inevitable that he was eventually going to end up the protagonist of a Monster Erotica. And this one was actually published a while back, like 10 years ago. So this is all about a woman named Maritza who has inherited a strange artifact from her grandmother and discovers that it is in fact a piece of Krampus's beard. And Krampus is coming to collect. Now, this is as kitschy and delightful as I was hoping for. I believe it is a novella. It's a little bit shorter. And it has a lot of emphasis on the Krampus lore, but of course also some steamy scenes. There is a subplot with an antagonist, but honestly, it kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere. And the best parts of it are just Maritza and Krampus, like, getting to know each other. I think my favorite steamy scene in this book is the one that takes place in a confessional in a Catholic church. That's fun. But regardless, I am really impressed with this book, mostly because it was published kind of in the early days of indie books as ebooks taking off, back when ebooks were still the new thing that no one was sure of. and I'm kind of sad because the author in that book mentioned that she was going to do an entire series of holiday-based erotica, and I believe she did publish another one in 2014 for Valentine's Day, but since then, nothing. And me and my friend Laura have been like investigating this because we were so both interested in this book, and we've been trying to dig more out and see what happened. Like, did something happen in her personal life? Did she just get really discouraged? Because again, she was publishing in the very early days of indie ebooks, back when everyone was still prophesying that ebooks as a whole would fall. And of course, 10 years later, now we know that ebooks are the bread and butter of indie publishing. And so part of me is like, if she'd waited a couple more years, she could have seen things blow up and what happened to her. Like, it's the endless mystery that me and Laura talk about. But I loved this book a lot. It's great for some kitschy erotica fun around the holidays, especially if you're like, I don't really like Christmas, but I'd love things that are weird Christmas, and definitely be prepared for that confessional sex scene. I'm not even sure it would work. I've never been in a confessional. My family was Protestant, but I have to imagine if you're ex-Catholic, you'll get something out of that. This next one goes out to everyone with religious trauma. You know those old biblical style angels? Not the cute ones on the Christmas decorations, but like Old Testament angels that had to tell people don't be afraid because they were terrifying. Have you ever wanted to fuck one? Well, Frady Smoon wrote Exodus 23 with that exact premise in mind. It centers around a trans man named Diego who is really struggling in life. He owes his mom a lot of money after helping bail him out of jail, so he agrees to go work helping renovate this old church. And there's a mysterious caretaker there named Ariel, and they get to know each other, and Ariel has secrets. You know where this is going. I was not expecting the full version of like Ariel's true form, but this book definitely walks the line between utter blasphemy, which I'm like, obviously I'm sure if you're like devout religious, you will 100% find this blasphemous. But if you're like, you know, the ex-evangelical squad, or, you know, maybe you're a religious person that also has a sense of all the wrongs those religions have committed, you might really enjoy this one. It's also a lot of focus on Latin cultures. Diego is Mexican, if my memory serves. Again, I read so many of these books so long ago. And Ariel's physical form is based off of Brazil. So it's a lot of discussion on like the intermingling of different Latin cultures among the like diaspora of the entire thing. And I really liked that aspect. I was almost tempted to put this one in the more advanced category just because, one, it's religious based, and two, it is an old school Old Testament angel. Eyes everywhere. However, it's a novella. It's pretty short. There's actually, if I remember correctly, only one sex scene in which Diego actually sees Ariel's full extent. There's another one with, like, you know, Diego has his eyes closed in a praying position. That scene, so good. I also like erotica that includes trans people and the full extent of what it is like being physically intimate when you're trans, because I feel like that's like such an awkward taboo thing for so many people. And so I love when erotica like addresses it directly and graphically. And as former pastor's kid, love it. Love the slight bit of blasphemy, although it also discusses how religion, when done correctly, aka not the way it's being mostly done today, it actually can offer a lot of help. There's a lot of talk on undocumented immigration in the book. It talks about a lot, considering the fact that it's a novella and it's that short. But I am a big fan of this work. I need to get into more of Frady Smoon's work. They are Achillean Transmask, I believe. I'm working on it. I gotta keep rereading everyone's Twitter profiles these days. But really enjoyed this one. really, it almost feels off the wall, off kilter, unhinged when you first think about it, but the book puts it all together so well. I believe this is up for awards. I think that Indie Ink Awards, I believe, or something like that. But big fan. Check this one out. Now moving on to the more advanced books on the list. Like I mentioned before, this is all a matter of opinion, but I'm pretty sure that if you're really new to this genre and still getting your feet wet, these ones you might want to wait on, or I don't know, jump with both feet into that icy cold water. I believe in you, regardless. First up, we have Strange Love by Anne Aguirre. This is an alien romance all about a alien named Xylar who sucks at finding a mate. His species has a chosen ceremony in which basically everyone has to compete in these like trials to see if you're worthy to procreate. And he's never been picked by anyone and had them actually win the trial, and this is his last chance. If he doesn't do it, he's basically going to become a drone slave. So in a desperate bid, he seeks out what he thinks is another alien to be his mate, but stumbles across Earth by accident, and through basically a giant misunderstanding, accidentally kidnaps a human because he thinks he stumbled across a battlefield that she needs saving from, not knowing that it was just a recreation of a Civil War battle. So she gets kidnapped, and of course the ship goes haywire, so we can't just take her back because the GPS went wonky. And Beryl's like, well, crap, I'm here. Let's try it, just for no other reason than she's gonna survive a lot better as his mate than as a lone human. And I like this one because it's like, what if alien romance, but also tournament to the death? Because a lot of the aspects of the choosing like ceremony involve like PvP, like fighting or like dangers. You literally have to survive. And so she's like teaming up with other potential mates of this alien species to try and like make it work, and like literally fighting for her life. And then Xylar has to fight for his life. It's very high tension for a romance. But the reason that I put this one as so much higher is 100% the sex scenes. Now, the author has gone on to note that she was inspired for this alien species genitalia based on cave insects. If that gives you any indication, there is nothing even approximating a like dick in this book. It's very strange. I liked it for its newness, but it's definitely going to be something that, if you're used to standard erotica, will probably throw you for a loop. Actually, this is one of the few recommendations that Book Talk has given me that I actually liked. It's very rare. And even the book talker that suggested it was like, had to swear off all alien romances for a hot minute because this went through for such a loop. But I liked Xylar. He's such an adorable little himbo. I liked the giant stakes. I liked the big fighting. And in general, I liked that Beryl was much more of a, like, let's grab it by the horns and go type of character and making her own decisions. A lot of agency. Love to see it. This is the beginning of a series. I have not continued it yet. However, the sequel to this one only seems like marginally attached. It's not like another one of Xylar's alien comrades is getting, like, it's not that kind of romance series. It's going to jump around the universe a little bit, it looks like. But I do want to continue with this. I loved it for its sheer weirdness, but it will probably be more advanced if you're not well versed in this genre. This next one will probably explain itself as to why it's in the advanced category, and that is Ensnared by Tiffany Roberts. You are seeing that cover correctly. That is a giant spider alien with a human half, and hence why it's in our advanced section of this list, because spiders. That being said, I liked this story a lot as well. It was suggested to me by my friend Laura, and it revolves around this spider alien race. Although I guess they're not the aliens, because Catan, who always lives on the fringes of society, goes off into the jungle of this planet to hunt and stumbles across this giant pit and discovers at the bottom of this giant pit a strange ship. A spaceship. Yes, in this instance, the aliens are actually the humans that have crash landed on this planet. I loved that reversal. But he climbs into this crashed ship and discovers these like life pods, cryogenic pods that are still working, and accidentally freeze one of the humans from the cryogenic pods, and I bet you can't guess what's gonna happen next. That's right, they fall in love. Ivy is, understandably terrified when she wakes up to find herself being carried by a giant spider alien and taken to his nest. And this one has one of my favorite tropes. I love this trope in alien romances, where they don't just jump over the language issues. They don't just do the whole, oh, insert language chip, we're done now. No, they actually have to like learn each other's languages. I love that. That's one of my favorite aspects in any alien romance, that so many of them skip over. And like, I get why you do, because after a certain extent, it just gets boring and slow. But those kind of like slow learning each other's culture moments are just, it's one of the reasons I love this subgenre so much. I love the total, we are so different from each other. We have to really work to make this work. But the problem is that Catan is wanted as the mate of the queen of their little, like, spider alien conglomerate. But he's not interested. However, this is a matriarchal society. The women or female spiders, you know what I mean, are bigger, stronger. They're the ones that decide things, and the queen literally is like head of everything. And so turning her down, especially for a tiny, weak human, is bad news bears. But I loved this one. I love the setting. The setting is very vivid. Catan is such a sweetheart. And yes, I know that a lot of people are going to look at this and be like, spider, no. But honestly, like, it is a really cool character design. I do like how the spinning webs comes into it, and he's really big on weaving, and their arachnid god is like a weaver. Like, it all plays in really well. I loved it. I do need to continue it. The only reason I haven't is because the next one, and obviously I'm not going to spoil anything, but the next one is a direct following of this one, and it has gigantic stakes. I'm not prepared for those really big stakes right now. And also it might serve me well to do it as like a hyped book for a readathon that I do late in the year. Regardless, please don't let the spider thing freak you out. This is actually an adorable romance. I mean, yes, they also do have sex. Obviously, it's monster erotica, but it's adorable, I swear. And lastly, last of the advanced section and last on our list is Broken Earth by S.J. Sanders. This is all about an alien that comes down to Earth to find it is basically in a post-apocalyptic state. So this is both alien romance meets dystopian. And I really like that. I like that the two genres work together so well. But our alien, who has a gigantic name that basically just goes by Viral through most of the book, discovers this human woman scavenging in the ruins of what was once a big city. And her name is Terry. She's very scrappy, and he realizes that he's beginning to form a mate bond with her. However, in his species, that's not allowed. Mating is very strictly monitored, and you have to meet certain requirements, and you're not supposed to do it outside of those bonds. So it's big no-no if anyone from his species realizes that he's bonding with someone. And then on top of that, they're trying to scavenge for supplies, and, he's a bounty hunter just trying to get goods. But also, this is a dystopian post-apocalypse. So there's raiders and those kind of issues. So I really liked the sheer number of tensions in the book. I really liked, again, the creature design for Viral was very nice. I liked how much agency Terry had. The reason that I think I would most put this as a more advanced one is, again, for the sex scenes, the genital type stuff is a little bit different than most. It is not just like a normal, again, not a normal dick, which for a lot of people is like the the point they check out, where it's like, I'll do if they look weird, but some stuff still gotta look the same. This one does not. And of course he has like mandibles, so a lot of like the face type stuff might weird people out. But I loved, he has one of my other favorite kind of tropes in this kind of romance, which is like the whole gruff, I do not want to like them, I don't like them. Fuck, I like them. I love that like, no, I don't like her. Crap. It's one of my favorites. I love that one so much. But Terry, in fact, proves to have a lot of leadership abilities when they stumble across other survivors. Not as much world building, but I can't give it too much crap for that because it's a dystopian. And so all you really need to know is dangerous dystopian wasteland, and that pretty much works. I also want to give an honorable mention to Red by S.J. Sanders. That was included in my tiered list for if you like the Blue Alien Smut Book list. Again, linked down below. That was basically a sci-fi retelling of Red Riding Hood, only the wolf was 3 wolf aliens. But Red Riding Hood was a redhead, and that one is also good. I would also check that one out. Honestly, that one's probably less advanced than this one is. I mean, granted, there's 3 of them, so if you haven't read a lot of stuff with polyamory, that might take a bit getting into. But in general, I think everyone should get into all of these genres because they're just great. And like I mentioned earlier, it's all just opinion. But most importantly, I don't want anyone to go into this thinking like, oh, look at her rating sex like sex is bad. Like, I'm not saying it to that extent. I am in no way saying that because a book is more advanced that I'm trying to scare people away from them. But when it comes to things that are involved in erotica and involved in sex and involved in those kind of kinks, it is very, very important to make sure that people know exactly what they are getting into. Consent should always be informed, and I'm not just going to hide if a book I know is different and weird than what they're expecting and let them stumble across it on their own. If you're not used to erotica, like a lot of people aren't, we still live in a very sex-repressed society, I don't want to like scare them away from the entire genre because they jumped into the deep end without knowing it was the deep end. Regardless, I love all these books. I would highly recommend them. I really, really hope you decide to check at least one of them out. And of course, any recommendations would be loved. I am always looking to expand this list, and my love of monster erotica has been severely deepened recently, and it's like I can't find it quickly enough, and all of the books that I really want to read don't have the next book in the series out yet, and I'm dying, but October is going to be lit. Multiple sequels are coming out in October. I'm so excited. But regardless, any and all recommendations would be highly appreciated. And of course, let me know if this is a genre you're interested in. If you haven't gotten into it, why not? What is holding you back? Would you ever consider it moving forward? If you haven't considered it, but you watched this entire video, thank you. I don't know why, but thank you. Regardless, with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.